Hello and welcome to another scrapbooking process video. I'm Tracy, also known as MercyTiara, and I do scrapbooking process videos and more here on YouTube. Today I'm going to be playing with the background cut file from the Joy kit from MercyTiara Kits, and I'm also going to be using the kit itself for filling in some of those pretty ornaments. Here I have a photo of my Christmas tree in 3 different phases. We have smart lights on our Christmas tree that we can program to do all sorts of wild and wonderful things. And I have it set to some non-traditional Christmas colors for now. We'll switch it to more traditional in a little bit. I cut the cut file in the size that it came in, so I did not change the size. I'm actually not going to use that green paper as a background. I'm just trying to hold the space and get a sense of how big 12 by 12 is. Checking out my kit planning tool just to see if there are any ideas I had that I wanted to make sure that I tried this month, but there was nothing there popping out at me. There's the website for the Kit Club. If you're interested in purchasing this kit, you can see those pattern papers over to the left are pattern papers from the kit. And when I cut that cut file, I actually kept the insides of the shapes so that I could use them to trace out onto my pattern papers to make it easier to cut out the shapes that will fit behind those shapes. So I did also grab a piece of white cardstock because I'm pretty sure I'm going to use a white background for this with some mixed media between the cut file and that white pattern paper so that it doesn't look so much like white on white. First though, I'm just going to focus on filling in the cut file with patterned papers behind each of those really cute retro shaped ornaments. I'm starting with some of these tags from the Paige Evans paper that came in the kit. This particular paper with all of the little tags on it gives lots of smaller versions of some of the patterns that are in that collection. The kit did not include all of these different patterns, so having these tags is a really nice way to increase the number of patterns that you have, as well as the tags tend to be a smaller scale of pattern as well, which looks nice in these smaller little cutouts. This paper is probably my favorite in the kit, so I definitely wanted one of these ornaments to be backed in that beautiful floral paper. And I just thought I would walk you through my process for picking some of these patterns. So I have a floral one, I have one that looks like a sweater, I have one with snowflakes. I really wanted to include these candy cane stripes, and I can't decide if I want them vertical striped or if I want them on a diagonal. I'm going to trace it on the vertical. I'm going to cut this out and have a look at it and decide if I like how it looks or not. So I put that under there and immediately I don't like it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on the diagonal. When I put it on the diagonal, I want one of the edges of the shape to line up and be straight with the lines of the pattern, right? So I didn't want too many angles going on. So just making sure that at least one of the lines is parallel to the lines on the pattern helps it look a little bit less busy. This is a pretty intricate shape. I love this kind of ornament, and I'm going to cut this out of this candy cane paper. And what I'm going to find is that once I cut this pattern out, there's not going to be any candy canes in the center part of it. So I don't love how that, I really would have liked to have had some candy canes in the center. And I'm also going to put, I like the idea of having the star be out of a star paper. So I'm putting this here, and I'm wanting to spread out the 2 lime greens that show up on this design. And once I put the star in place, I think that they're actually too close together. They're not side by side, but I would like it better if it was there. So I'm going to switch those two. But yeah, so I will just trace around. And as I trace these, I'm tracing them bigger than the shape itself. So I'm not tracing exactly along the edge of that cutout shape. I'm allowing a little buffer around all sides of the shape so that as I cut on the lines, the shape is actually bigger than the hole so that there's something for the glue to stick to. Now, I would love to use up these scraps, but it's just not quite big enough to cut that star shape out of. And now I'm going to be more selective about where I'm placing this star to trace it so that I'm getting some of the candy canes right in the center of the design. Since I had to cut it again anyways, I think that if I didn't decide to switch the patterns, I probably would have just left that one. But since I had to recut it, I decided to do it this way. Now, I don't love how that paper is going to look as one of these ornaments. I don't love the ornaments on ornaments, although I do love stars on stars. It just, I think that those ornaments were too big to really get a good sense of. I noticed that I had another sheet of these tags and more patterns were exposed, like weren't cut into. So I'm going to use that. I also decided to take a look at this 6x8 paper pad, which was an add-on to the kit. And it's from Vicky Bouton's Peppermint Kisses. So it's from a different collection, but the colors are really similar. So I think I'm going to use this. I love this turquoise and blue and green plaid. I'm going to use this for this design, and then I'm going to use that hexagon paper for the last cutout. And using a plaid here just adds another variant of pattern. Some of these patterns start to all kind of look the same. I didn't want too many florals or too many stripes or too many dots, so this adding a plaid there adds some variation, and then these hexagons add even more variation. And of course, this one introduces some new colors too, like yellow. It's going to be good that I have yellow on this page because when I do my mixed media, some of my green ink is going to end up looking yellow. I didn't know it at the time, but it turns out that it's good that this piece has some yellow. So that's how the cutout will look once it's all glued together. And let's start gluing it. I'm going to use my liquid glue for this. I'm going to use my Art Glitter Dries Clear Designer Adhesive, and I use the metal tip applicator, which has a little pin in it, which keeps it from drying in the bottle and clogging up your nozzle. And I'm just going to outline with the glue and then stick that piece in place, flip it over to make sure that it's looking good. I did have to shift it up a little bit so that there was just a little piece of, like the top of the tag was showing, that I wanted to just not have it show so much. So I will repeat this with all of these shapes, trimming it down as needed. So I check the front to make sure that the shape is the right size and it's not sticking out anywhere. I run a bead of glue around the outside edges of it. I put it in place, check it again, and just repeated that for all of those. The process was so much the same that I decided to cut that part out. I do like to share my whole process with you folks so that you get a sense of how a page comes together. I create real-time videos for my patrons, and what I'm explaining to my patrons there is that you could cut this file out multiple times and piece it together to fill a whole 12 by 12 sheet, and that would be really interesting too. Now I'm playing around with different ideas for my backgrounds. I didn't think that the green looked all that bad after all, but it was a little bit too powerful, and I was surprised at how much I actually really liked the look of this red glitter paper as a background. But again, it's a little too harsh. I was looking forward to the white background with the mixed media. So I do think that this looks good, probably the best alternative to the white background, but I'm going to go with the white background. I'm playing around with titles. At this point, I'm thinking my title will be Oh Christmas Tree, and it will be probably out of those thickers over to the side, those Vicky Bouton Peppermint Kisses thickers that came in the embellishment add-on. I was just thinking because I would like to use one of these pre-made titles because I like how they look, but none of them really worked with what I was trying to document here. So I decided against that. Now, I do have to pick out some mixed media, and I was trying to think about what I would do if I would do paint or or different kinds of mixed media, like gelatos, for example, is one of my favorites. But I decided to pull out my distress inks because I haven't used them for a while, and I thought that these three shades worked really well. I have picked raspberry, twisted citron, and peacock feathers. And I just want a little bit of mixed media to be showing through those little gaps between the ornaments on that cut file, and also just radiating a little bit outside of the border of that cut file as well. I'm going to cover my whole page in gesso, and I'm just using a gift card here to spread it super thin on my page. It helps it to dry very fast. Gesso dries fast anyways. Golden gesso is my favorite kind. It has a very creamy, smooth consistency. It's not too grainy, and I just love it. So that actually dried super fast, and I'm ready to go. I grabbed some water while I was out. I took a little break for a second and grabbed some water, and oops, there was just a little piece showing that I need to trim off here. It's showing from the other side. So there we go. And I think I'm going to position it like this with the photo over to the left and the lower part of the layout. I feel like I've been putting my photo over on the right a little bit too often, so it's time to mix things up a little bit and go over on the other side. I'm going to use this acrylic stamp block for mixing my colors. I'm not really mixing my colors, I'm just mixing some ink with some water to make it really fluid. It also, because it's distress oxide, it does react with the water as well and makes the color a little bit creamier. And then I'm using a round brush to just move the ink around. So I'm using a combination here of the packaging technique, which is where you just kind of smoosh the media onto your background paper using some type of packaging. Here I have just a laminated piece of paper that comes in my printer paper packs. And then because it's pooling up so much on that paper, it's a little bit different than regular plastic packaging. I'm just moving it around with my round brush. And with that round brush, if you dab it, like placing little dots on it, it allows the ink to really pool up and make different colors and like not different colors, but different shades of the color. Whereas if you just spread it out, it just kind of spreads out and doesn't have as much of an interesting look. So moving on to the second color here, I left some space to add some pink in between. I don't really want to layer my colors here. I want them to be in different places so that they're not overlapping, because then I don't want to get blue plus pink equals purple, for example. I want it to be just blue and just pink. It's okay if there's a little bit of purple over here and there. So I'm adding some pink using the exact same strategy of ink plus water on my stamping block. I just have a piece of paper underneath of my stamping block so I can see the true color of the ink, and using a combination of that packaging technique and then just moving the ink around with my brush. Now this works much, much better because I used gesso. If I didn't use gesso, as soon as that ink hits the paper, it's going to start soaking into the paper and it's going to stay put. It's not going to move around the way that this ink is moving around on the page. See how I'm getting a really pretty watercolor effect? I would not get that if I didn't use gesso. So that's the benefit of gesso. Now I have a few places where I'd like to fill in, and that's where this green is coming in. I'm also adding some little sprinkles of splatters just by tapping my paintbrush while it's loaded up with the ink. I keep putting my cut file back in place so that I can see how this ink is going to look as it shows through the holes between the ornaments, as well as how it extends above and beyond the cut file. I decided I needed just a little bit more pink, basically that bottom ornament that extends down quite far south on the page. I wanted a little bit of mixed media on the background around that bottom red ornament that peeks out. So I am liking how that looks, just kind of playing around with it. I'm looking at, the reason I'm holding it there so long is I'm looking at a couple of different things. I'm looking at all the spaces between the ornaments, and I'm also looking above and I'm looking below just to make sure that the ink is in the places where I want it to be. And this is where I'm going to set it, and that's where my photo will live. And I really like how this looks. I think it looks really, really pretty. And just a little less boring than the tone-on-tone white would have been without the mixed media. Now, this was something I wasn't sure if I would like. I was trying to think of what I'm going to do with all of the tops of these ornaments. I thought about tying little bows of baker's twine on it, and I think that would have looked really cute. But before I did that, I was pretty sure I actually wouldn't like this look, but I thought I'm not going to know if I like it or not until I try it. And I thought it might be just too busy, but I decided to cut 7 pieces, and it turns out I needed more, but I thought I needed 7 pieces of this ribbon, and I would just see if it's going to look like too much. So I'm going to put this through in just a couple of places, and you know, the more I put it through, and this is just ribbon from my stash, it's actually Stampin' Up! Ribbon from several years ago. I've had this in my stash for a long time. The more I put these ribbons through, the more I really liked them and realized, yeah, I'm pretty sure this actually is not going to be too much. I think I'm going to actually really like it. So I'm putting each ribbon through the little hole and doubling it up, and then I'm stapling it in place. I want all my staples to be going in the same direction, so all my staples are horizontal, and look at how that looks. I don't know, I thought it was going to be too much, but I actually really love those ribbons really tie together that cut file that otherwise every pattern is so different, right? And every shape is different, but adding the same ribbon to each hole gives it that consistency and pulls the whole thing together. I really love how that looks. Also, because I use the green ribbon and there's these punches of red, it really helps I want to say traditionalize, if you know what I mean. It brings out some of the more traditional colors in this color palette, which has a lot of non-traditional colors in it. So I didn't want it to look quite as pastel as my last pastel layout, which I will link right here. I basically wanted this one to have a little bit more obvious red and green in it to make it look more Christmassy. My lights, of course, are very non-traditional in this photo. We keep our lights in these pastel fun colors up until closer to Christmas, and then we switch over to more traditional colored lights. And because we have white and silver balls on our tree, whatever color lights we have, the tree, all the balls reflect those colors. So it looks, we don't have to redecorate our tree to get a red and green look for Christmas. I matted the photo collage there with the glitter paper that I was thinking about using for the background, and I really love that. It adds such a strong red component, and it adds quite a bit of structure and brings your eye to the photos as opposed to having those beautifully backed ornaments being so dominant. Those ornaments are really beautiful, but I want you to also be sure to take in the photos as well on this page. I'm really stuck on the idea of using these Vicki Boutin titles, even though none of the titles really work all that well for the story I want to tell. You could always go with something generic like Holiday Wishes or Magic Moment. Like, those are pretty flexible titles you could use on almost anything, but I also couldn't figure out from a design perspective how to do it. And so I'm just playing around with different ideas here for titles. I wanted to see how it says Merry and Bright in smaller word stickers. I thought about actually putting the Merry and Bright right where it is right now, and then putting May Your Days Be across the top. And that's why I came to these letters. These are the letter stickers from the Gather kit from last month from MercyTiara Kits, and they're green, so I thought maybe I could put May Your Days Be along the top in these green, and then Merry and Bright in those white stickers on the photo. But I ultimately decided not to do that, but rather to use the title just Merry and Bright, but not the version on that title sticker set. I'm going to just spell out merry and bright using these thickers from Vicky Bouton that came in the embellishment add-on. I'm using my thicker alignment tool here, which is really just a really thin ruler that has lines on it, so you don't have to find these and buy them specifically for this, but I happen to have it. So I'm going to spell out merry and bright, and my ampersand there is just a wood veneer from my stash. I really love ampersands. They do a lot of work for the little tiny space, and what I mean by they do a lot of work is they look beautiful and they come in different styles, like stylized and cursive and more typographical, and they, you know, allow you to not have to spell out A and D, which would be too monotonous here. I wouldn't want to spell out merry and bright all in the same letters in this circumstance, and also I would have run out of space. So ampersands are great to have on hand. For whatever reason, Mary was a little bit too high, so I moved her down a little bit. And here I'm going to experiment with using the Bo Bunny stencil paste that came in the kit. I'm going to apply it, and at first I thought I'd apply it with my palette knife, but that's not really working so well. I have to put my finger on it anyways, and it's kind of coming out thicker in some areas and thinner in others, so I've just decided to color it in using my fingers instead of using my color palette. Do a little bit of finger painting. Now, there are pros and cons to using stencil paste as a paint. The pro is that it's thick, so you don't need multiple coats of paint, but the con is that it's thick and it can get gooped up in between all of the little nooks and crannies of your letter. So I just ran and got a toothpick from my kitchen and got all of the little goopy parts out of it. And when I did, I just kind of messed it up a little bit. So I'm just going over it with a second coat. It really wouldn't have needed a second coat if I had just done it this way in the first place and skipped the palette knife. But I included this in my process so that you can learn from my mistakes. And if I were doing this again, I would just apply it with the tip of my finger very lightly so that it didn't go down inside all of the nooks and crannies. Then I wouldn't have had to clean it out with a toothpick in the first place. So I'm just using some of that Art Glitter Dries Clear adhesive on the back of that ampersand. And then I'm also going to add some of that glue to each of these letters. You're only going to see me do a few of them. I will put the picture in place first because the photo provides my alignment tool for lining up these letter stickers. I did stick them all on with glue. I just cut out some of this process because it was just too repetitive. So there we go. Everything is glued down, and the reason those letter stickers were sticking fine, but it's just my experience that chipboard letter stickers in particular have a tendency to pop off in my scrapbook album down the road, like several years later, and so I'd rather just avoid that by gluing them down right now while I'm making the page. Now this is my little journal alignment stencil, and I am going to draw out 3 lines underneath of my photos, and I'm using my Sharpie pen here. The Sharpie pen writes so smoothly over the gesso. It's unbelievable. I love how it writes. I wish I could gesso over everything before I journal because it's a very smooth experience. My journaling here says, "These smart twinkly lights swirl and change, making our tree look different all the time. We love watching the colors dance." You can actually set it to your music too so that it will change with the beat of your music, which is fun. Now I'd like a little something down here. It looks a little plain, so I'm going to go back and grab some more mixed media and do a little bit more sprinkling just down here at the bottom. I used my same little acrylic block, and I just picked up some of that paint. It looks like my brush is clean. It's just that the bristles are stained blue. I wouldn't want to use a dirty brush there or I'd end up with purple, but I've got just a little tiny bit of splatter below my journaling and over through my journaling actually. And I like how that looks. Now my last step here, I'm not going to embellish this other than just what's already on the page with those beautiful cut files and the mixed media behind it, but I thought I might add some confetti here. And this is just like a little bit too busy for my taste. You know, when I look at it now, it looks great. But when I looked at it then, I was like, that's a little bit too busy. So I took it off, and what I'm going to do instead is selectively place the pink confetti pieces. These confetti, each color except for the little stars, come in 3 different sizes, so I can get quite a bit of variation even just using one color of confetti. Thought about adding green there as well, but instead I'm going to add the stars. So we have little bits of pink confetti just to add a little bit of glistening to the background, and then the stars add a little bit of visual interest there as well. I'm using my Art Glitter Dries Clear adhesive to glue all of these down, and I'm also using my We Are Memory Keepers pickup stick. Both of these products are available in our shop, so if you do get our kits, you can add the glue, the metal tip, and also the pickup stick, all with your order if you need those products. I find that pickup stick is a real game changer for placing confetti pieces and sequins and any little tiny thing. I decided to add a little star down there too, just to finish it off. And now we have a real diagonal look across this page, and I really do love how it looks. I'll hold it up so that you can see close up via video. And you will also get to see close-up photos, including close-ups of the mixed media before and after the cut file was put on. But before I show those photos, I just want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. These folks help make this channel happen, so big thanks to all of them. Patrons get early ad-free access to all of my process videos, as well as real-time unedited versions of my videos, monthly live streams, behind-the-scenes videos of my room and my process. So thanks to all of these folks. It's people like Christina and Nikki and Elise and Stephanie who make this channel happen, so big thanks to them. And here is what the mixed media looked like before I added the cut file. There's the cut file in place, and here is the final layout all complete. And look at the glistening that you get from that ampersand being gold. I love how that looks. It's so pretty. There's the layout from a little bit more of a distance, and you'll get to see some more close-ups here. Oh my goodness. This page was so much fun to make. The cut file is amazing. I had so much fun with it. I'm tempted to actually try it again with a different color palette just to see how it looks. It was so much fun to make this page. Here are some of the places where you can find me, and leave me a comment and let me know if you use cut files very often in your scrapbooking process. I'd love to hear from you. Take care and have a really great scrappy week.